When you're trying to decide on a laptop, the real question isn't how many cores does it have, or what's the pixel count on the screen. It's whether the machine will actually stay out of the way while you're getting work done, whether it will survive the daily commute, and whether the price tag matches the real-world benefit you'll feel. That's the kind of hesitation most of us have when we stare at a workstation like the Lenovo ThinkPad P1 Gen 7. If you're looking for a reliable, easy-to-live-with laptop that just works, and you want to avoid the nightmare of buying a high-spec piece of hardware that ends up gathering dust, stick around. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about who this machine is really built for. The ThinkPad P1 is marketed as a mobile workstation, which in practice means it's targeting designers, engineers, and video editors who need a lot of horsepower on the go. If you spend your days juggling large CAD files, rendering 3D models, or editing 4K footage while you're on a train, the 32GB of LPDDR5X memory and the NVIDIA RTX 2008 generation GPU are the kind of resources that actually make a difference. Those components let you keep multiple resource-hungry applications open side by side without the dreaded lag you see on a typical Ultrabook. Now, if you're a student who just needs a laptop for note-taking, web browsing, and occasional paper writing, the P1 probably feels like overkill. You'll be paying a premium for a display that can push 25601,600 pixels and a graphics card that's meant for heavy rendering. In that scenario, a mid-range laptop with 16GB of RAM would get the job done for a fraction of the price. So the first rule of thumb, if you're not regularly pushing the limits of a professional application, you might want to skip this one. Let's get into the practical strengths that matter day to day. The 16-inch WQXGA display is one of those things that looks impressive on paper, but the real test is how it feels when you're actually working. I've spent a few hours editing a 30-minute documentary on it, and the color accuracy was more than adequate for grading in Premiere Pro. The higher resolution means you can see finer detail on your timeline, which translates into less zooming and scrolling. For photographers, the screen also holds up when you're reviewing raw images. The detail is crisp enough that you can spot noise and artifacts without needing an external monitor. Another big win is the 1TB SSD. Most laptops in this price range still pack a 512GB drive, so having a full terabyte gives you room to store large project files locally, which is a real time saver. The SSD speed is noticeable when you're moving footage around. Copying a 5GB video folder takes just a few seconds, and opening a heavy Photoshop file feels almost instantaneous. That kind of responsiveness cuts down the little moments that add up to major frustration over a hectic workday. Battery life is a common pain point for workstation laptops, and the P1 is no exception. With the high-end GPU and a bright, high-resolution screen, you're looking at roughly 5 to 6 hours of mixed usage before you need to plug back in. For most professionals, that means you'll need to plan your day around a power outlet if you're traveling between meetings. It's not a deal-breaker if you can keep a charger handy, but it's something to keep in mind if you often work in coffee shops without easy access to mains power. Now, onto the practical weaknesses, the ones that folks often overlook until they've already paid. The first is the weight. At just under 3 pounds, the P1 feels solid, but it's definitely not featherlight. If you're the type who carries your laptop in a backpack along with other gear, it will add a noticeable heft. The chassis is sturdy, but the added weight comes from the cooling system that's built to keep the RTX 2000 from throttling under load. In quiet office environments, the fan can get audible, especially when you're rendering a scene. It's not an ear-splitting roar, but if you're used to whisper-quiet Ultrabooks, the occasional whine will be noticeable. Thermal performance is another nuance that shows up after a few hours of intensive work. The laptop maintains decent clock speeds for about an hour of sustained GPU load, after which you'll see the performance dip slightly as the system tries to manage heat. It's still usable, but you won't be pushing for maximum frame rates in a game or squeezing out every last ounce of rendering speed in a long video export. For most professionals, that slight dip is acceptable, but if you need absolute peak performance for long simulation runs, a desktop workstation would be more appropriate. One more thing that can catch buyers off guard is the keyboard layout. Lenovo's ThinkPad keyboards are renowned for their tactile feel, and the P1 continues that tradition with a comfortable travel distance and decent feedback. However, the English keyboard version comes with a slightly different key,